Game of Thrones cut the real Aegon Targaryen storyline from the TV show, but what the hell is it? Who is the real Aegon Targaryen? Who's Young Griff? Who's Old Griff? How is Tyrion involved in all of this? Huh? So I'm going to recount the entire Young Griff storyline entirely from memory, and well, let's see how I do. So starting in A Dance with Dragons, Book 5, spoilers obviously, but we are in the aftermath of Tyrion, just killing his father, and then jumping on that boat to Essos and heading in that direction. So at the beginning of the book, Tyrion arrives at Essos and goes to the mansion of Illyrio Mopatis. He is the very big, tubby merchant who helped sell Daenerys to the Dothraki, to Khal Drogo, and is one of the puppet masters along with his bestie Varys. Now, Illyrio's plan is to send Tyrion to go be with Daenerys and to help her, in her conquest of Westeros, because right now she is still in Meereen. Now, to help Tyrion get to Daenerys, Illyrio sends him to travel with a motley crew of people being led by this guy right here, Griff. Griff is a sellsword, so he says, and he's traveling with his son, Young Griff, who is a young strapping boy here with his hair dyed blue. Now, this group of people on the boat heading to Daenerys are kind of a strange lot. You have, Griff the sellsword and his son. You have a woman named Septa Lemore. She's pretty obviously like a disgraced former Septa of the Faith of the Seven. You have this guy who was training to be a maester, but then seemingly didn't do it. He's called Haldren Halfmaester, but he's still pretty learned, because he studied at the Citadel. You have a knight, I think, named Sir Duckfield. Again, this is from my memory. And he's a knight, but, again, no one's really heard of him. How'd you become a knight? But you're really good at the swordplay, so, a knight, cool. And then there's, of course, these two guys and Tyrion. Now, Tyrion at this point in the story is in his chaotic evil phase, and he is really just, a cynic. He's drinking himself to death on the boat. He doesn't care about anything. He's very apathetic, but he's still Tyrion, so he's watching this group of people, and he starts, thinking that things are a little funny. Some interesting dynamics start to reveal themselves the longer he's on the boat, as he starts noticing that Young Griff over here has kind of like a swagger in his step, let's say. And he's also being heavily tutored by basically every member of the crew here. He studies the faith with Septa Lemore. He learns, battle skills and fighting, swordplay with the knight. He learns all about, history and science stuff and shit, whatever, with Haldren the Halfmaester. And it's all a little weird for someone who is basically like a glorified peasant, the son of a sellsword, Needless to say, it doesn't take long for Tyrion to suss out that these people aren't exactly who they say they are, and for him to put two and two together and figure out who this guy right here is. Because this guy right here is actually Lord Jon Connington, the disgraced former lord of Griffin's Roost. Jon Connington was also the best friend of Rhaegar Targaryen, and because of that, he was briefly the hand of the king to Aerys Targaryen, the Mad King, but then, when Jon Connington, who was very young at the time, being of the same generation as Rhaegar, didn't do a swell job at, dealing with Robert's rebellion, and Aerys not trusting him because he was Rhaegar's friend, he gets banished and exiled from Westeros. And then his bestie Rhaegar died, and Jon Connington was a very sad person because he was very much in love with Rhaegar Targaryen. So because Tyrion figures out that Griff is actually Jon Con, he realizes that, oh, this must be Aegon Targaryen, Rhaegar's son, who Rhaegar's best friend is now taking care of and raising as his own, kind of stepchild. Because old Aegon over here, he's got his blonde roots growing in, and if you look closely, the blue hair makes his eyes look like they're dark blue, but when the blue hair is not there, they look violet, as Targaryen eyes look. Or really Valyrian eyes, I should say. So with Tyrion figuring this all out, basically they finally kind of confess, and Aegon is like, okay, yeah, so basically what happened is that when things were starting to look south in King's Landing, Varys went to, Flea Bottom, and he basically paid for a child from a tanner. The tanner's wife who had just given birth, she had died. The tanner was a drunk now, and so Varys bought the baby for some wine, very sad, and then they swapped the babies in King's Landing. So the real Aegon Targaryen was smuggled out by Varys while the while the poor baby was there when the city was sacked, and then Elia Martell and her two children were. And so Varys, according to the story, smuggled Aegon out and took him to Essos, where he was put in the charge of Illyrio Mopatis, and then eventually put in the charge of Jon Connington when it was revealed that, Aegon had survived. And so John Connington, being Rhaegar's best friend, is like, of course I will raise my best friend's son, and then one day hopefully put him back on the throne, which is why we have this collection of people here. All of these people are training this kid. He's being taught the Faith of the Seven by Septa Lemore. He's being taught swordplay by Sir Duckfield. He's being taught, about science and history and just how to be intelligent by Half-Maester Haldren over there. Everything that a young king needs to, be intelligent and intelligently rule, all while living amongst the small folk and developing empathy for the small folk, which, according to them, is part of the goal. Like, Varys and all of these people want a king who, cares about the little guy. And so the reason they're heading to Daenerys is so that they can, unite the two Targaryen factions and then take Westeros together. But Tyrion, again, is in his chaotic evil, mode and is like, hey, but young Aegon, why do you care about getting Daenerys? Who says she'll even want to marry you? And Aegon, being, a teenage boy, is like, what do you mean she wouldn't want to marry me? Of course she'll want to marry me. We're the last Targaryens. And Tyrion, being chaotic, is like, I don't know if you, she would. She's pretty proud herself, and from everything I hear, And, your claim is better, so I don't get, why you want to go over there. And Aegon's like, oh my god, she might say no. What do I do? And Tyrion being like, well, who's to say you can't just, take Westeros yourself? It's in chaos at the moment. There's Tommen, the boy king, on the throne. The War of the Five Kings has decimated the country. So really, it's in a lot of chaos right now. So this might be your moment specifically. And then whenever Daenerys does make her way over, look, there'll be a worthy, companion that she can choose, an equal. And Aegon, being a 16-year-old boy, is like, oh, okay, yeah, maybe I don't need dragons. Maybe I can do this on my own, and then she'll respect me. Yay! Now, shortly after, Tyrion plants the seed, Tyrion wanders into a brothel where some really gross shit happens, and then he's kidnapped by Jorah, and they go off together. But then these two right here are like, hey, we're gonna meet up with the Golden Company, because that was the plan anyway, on our way to go see Daenerys. But once they get there, Aegon over here, Young Griff, is like, hey, I actually have a different plan. Why don't we go to Westeros right now, and Daenerys can, follow me if she feels like it. And the Golden Company are all like, yeah, sure, we're cool with that. And Jon Conn's like, okay, we can do that, I guess. And so they all decide, okay, we're going to Westeros now, and they do. They invade the southern part of Westeros. They land in the Stormlands, and they start taking out castles. But the beauty of it is, because no one knows he exists, and because, there is such chaos in the kingdom now, with Cersei being in charge, and Tommen, and the whole deal, they don't realize that they're being invaded initially, because they're just, quietly, taking one castle after the other, and just, slowly, invading the kingdom, before people, really start to realize that something is going wrong. So where we leave off, I think in the sample chapters of Winds of Winter, is Aegon has just taken Storm's End, the seat of House Baratheon, in a twist of irony. Which is crazy, because Storm's End is supposed to be impenetrable. So the fact that he did that is kind of insane, and doesn't bode well for the rest of Westeros. Now, there's two big complications to this storyline, which I think are going to have big implications for, the rest of the story if it ever gets completed. The first one is that this might not actually be Aegon Targaryen. So the story, Tyrion doesn't even fully believe it. He thinks that this kid is probably a fake, though the kid obviously believes that he is the real deal, because the idea that the real kid was smuggled out, it's all just a little too convenient. So Tyrion wonders if this is just some Valyrian looking boy, possibly a Blackfire, something that is being propped up as a real Targaryen, so that people like Varys and Illyrio can basically take over the throne of Westeros. Which honestly, I think that there is a very good chance that is the real deal, and it's, not going to turn out well because of that. Because if this is a secret Blackfire, not actually Rhaegar's son, John Connington over here has been, spending his life making his mission to put this kid on the throne, except, it's not really his, best friend kind of wannabe boyfriend's child. Also, Jon Con is the one who contracted the grayscale. Grayscale, makes you go crazy, and is hiding it. So he's helping Aegon do the invasion, but, he's probably going to start losing his mind soon. So when they take King's Landing, and this guy right here, who has trauma from the Sound of Bells, and the Sound of Bells makes him go a little crazy, it's probably not going to turn out really good for King's Landing when the Targaryen with this guy, invades. Also, the other issue is that Arion Martell in the books is traveling to meet him, and I have a sneaking suspicion that they're gonna, be teenagers, see each other, do googly eyes at each other, and then when Daenerys eventually makes her way, instead of him being available for marriage, he's gonna be married to a Martell, and yeah, it's my throne now, sorry. So we'll have to see how that turns out, okay? Okay, goodbye!